The Ishlar glided silently through the void, its sleek form cutting through the stars with predatory ease. Commander Zortan stood in the observation deck, gazing out at the vastness of space, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. The warship was a symbol of his species' dominance, a technological marvel built for war, destruction, and subjugation. His species had conquered countless star systems, and Earth had been nothing more than a passing mention in their intelligence reports. The transmission that came through moments ago, however, made Zortan's focus shift. The words, "hostile warship detected, human forces approaching," seemed so trivial, almost laughable. Humans. The idea was absurd. He had studied them, of course. Primitive, earthbound creatures with little more than a budding space program and crude weaponry. The kind of species that hardly posed a threat. To Zortan, it felt like a waste of time to even acknowledge the alert. He turned to his chief strategist, Varath, a quick-witted officer who had served with him for many cycles. Varath's eyes narrowed as he processed the transmission data on his screen. "Commander, the report appears accurate. A human fleet. Small, but they are approaching the system," Varath said, hesitating, then adding, "Their ships are using stealth technology. I've never seen anything quite like it. It's almost as if they're hiding in plain sight." Zortan's lips curled into a faint smile. "Hiding, you say? Well, no matter. Let them try. We'll crush them under the weight of the Ishlar." He gestured for Varath to continue the analysis. The alien strategist tapped a few keys, and a holographic map of the solar system appeared in the air before them, the human fleet's course plotted clearly. Zortan studied it, calculating the variables. The humans had some advantage, sure. Their stealth ships were impressive, but they were still outnumbered. Their weapons were unknown, but the Ishlar's energy shields and cannons would annihilate them in a matter of moments. "Full combat readiness," Zortan ordered. "Set course for Earth. We'll show them the power of a truly advanced race." Varath nodded, his fingers flying over the controls. The ship's engines hummed to life, and the Ishlar shifted into motion, its massive bulk gliding toward the blue and green planet below. Zortan's mind was already strategizing the battle. Earth would fall, just like all the others before it. But as the ship continued its approach, Zortan couldn't shake the nagging feeling in the back of his mind. The oddity of the human presence. Something about it didn't sit right. Still, he pushed the thought away. He had been in countless battles. He had never been wrong. This would be no different. General Elise Hayes stood before the expansive map of Earth's defenses, her eyes scanning the display as information flickered across the screen. A multitude of systems, sensor grids, planetary shields, orbital stations, were ready to respond to the alien threat. Yet, her thoughts weren't focused on the technology or the strategies. They were fixed on something else entirely, the humans themselves. "Admiral Riker," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "Prepare the fleet for full deployment. Make sure we have every advantage we can. I want no surprises." Admiral Riker, a seasoned officer with graying hair and a weathered face, nodded without hesitation. "Understood, General. The fleet is already on high alert. We'll be ready to move out in less than an hour." As Riker moved to issue orders, General Hayes turned her attention back to the map. A data stream pulsed from the distant solar system, the human fleet now in motion, silently crossing the stars toward the source of the threat. Despite the uncertainty of facing an unknown enemy, one whose ship was far superior in size and firepower, there was a quiet confidence among the soldiers. The one thing humanity had always excelled at was survival. They had survived famine, war, and even the ravages of their own mistakes. But now, they were facing a new kind of enemy, one who seemed beyond comprehension. A voice broke her concentration, pulling her back into the present. "General, there's something strange about the enemy vessel," came the voice of Lieutenant Mercer, the chief of reconnaissance, through her communicator. "It's unlike anything we've encountered. Their technology isn't just advanced. It's alien to the point of being unpredictable. She frowned, glancing over at her operations officer, Lieutenant Silva. Unpredictable. Yes, ma'am. We've been scanning the Ishlar for hours, but its technology doesn't align with any known patterns. It's almost as if they've designed it to be impossible to read. It's like they're hiding their true capabilities. Our systems can't predict their next move. Hayes took a deep breath. Her mind raced, but her exterior remained composed. Then we'll have to make our own predictions. Earth didn't get this far by waiting around for answers. We'll adapt. She turned to her officers, her voice firm. Tell every ship in our fleet to stay sharp. Expect the unexpected. This won't be an easy fight, but we've faced down the odds before. Today, we'll do it again. Her command center came alive as orders were relayed. Around her, officers scrambled to finalize the final preparations. This wasn't just about a battle. It was about humanity's survival. On the surface of Earth, civilians were unaware of the approaching storm. But those who knew the truth, those in command, prepared for what was to come. The humans were ready for a fight, not with overwhelming numbers or superior firepower, but with the strength of their ingenuity, courage, and sheer will to protect their home. The countdown had begun. The Ishlar descended through space like a predator stalking its prey. The massive warship, its dark metallic surface glistening against the backdrop of distant stars, approached Earth's orbit with calculated precision. Inside, Zortan stood on the bridge, his sharp gaze fixed on the planet below. He could feel the weight of the moment, the culmination of years of conquest and dominance. This was going to be another easy victory, a mere formality in the grand sweep of galactic history. Commander, we've entered the system. Varath, his second-in-command, reported from his station. The human fleet is positioning itself around Earth's outer perimeter. They're showing signs of readiness. Zortan allowed himself a small smile, though it was tinged with disdain. Let them prepare. It changes nothing. He turned to his crew. Prepare to fire at maximum strength. Let's send a message to these humans. The alien ship's cannons powered up, emitting a low hum that reverberated throughout the bridge. Zortan's hand hovered over the fire controls, poised to unleash destruction. He glanced at the view screen, where Earth came into clearer focus, its lush surface a stark contrast to the cold, barren reaches of space. With a single motion, Zortan's fingers pressed the button. The ship's weapons unleashed a violent barrage, a series of blazing energy beams that shot toward Earth's atmosphere. The missiles streaked through space, their trajectory unerring. Back on Earth, the human defense systems were on high alert. General Hayes stood in the command center, her eyes locked on the live feed from Earth's defense satellites. She had anticipated the attack, but nothing could fully prepare her for the raw power of the alien firestorm. The first volley of energy blasts struck Earth's orbital defense stations with blinding intensity, sending shockwaves through the communications network. Shields holding, Lieutenant Silva called out, though her voice betrayed a hint of disbelief. But they won't last long under sustained fire. Hayes didn't flinch. Keep them up as long as you can. Deploy the fleet. Immediately. The human ships sprang into action. The Tempest, Earth's flagship, led the charge, its sleek frame cutting through the stars like a dart. Small, agile fighter craft peeled off from the larger vessels, darting toward the alien ship, engaging in evasive maneuvers to avoid the deadly beams of energy. The human ships were smaller and less powerful, but their speed and unpredictability gave them a fighting chance. Zortan watched with growing interest as the human ships scattered, clearly trying to evade the incoming fire. Impressive, he muttered under his breath. But futile. With a casual gesture, he ordered a second, more powerful barrage. The Ishlar's cannons unleashed another wave of energy, each blast shuddering through the ship's framework as they rocketed toward the fleet. Zortan was certain this would break their defenses. The humans would scatter, retreat, or simply fall apart. But as the beams flashed toward the human ships, Zortan was taken by surprise. Some of the human vessels weren't retreating. They were charging straight into the barrage, moving with an unpredictable grace, weaving between the shots with impossible precision. "This isn't possible," Zortan muttered, his brow furrowing in disbelief. "How are they doing this?" One of the smaller human ships, a sleek craft painted with the markings of a reconnaissance team, zoomed past the Ishlar*, narrowly avoiding a blast that would have torn any other vessel to shreds. The ship deployed a set of small drones that immediately began jamming the Ishlar*'s sensor systems, scrambling its targeting calculations. Zortan's jaw tightened. "They're using tactics we haven't seen before." As the first wave of energy blasts slowed, a single human vessel broke through the chaos. A small, agile ship that seemed to move as if it were alive, evading the alien fire with uncanny skill. It wasn't enough to turn the tide, but the humans weren't backing down. They were forcing the Ishlar* to rethink its approach. And for the first time in Zortan's career, he felt a flicker of uncertainty. The battle raged in the cold vacuum of space, a chaotic dance of destruction between the mighty Ishlar and the swift human ships. Zortan's confidence had begun to waver. His ship's firepower was unparalleled, yet the humans were proving far more resourceful than he could have predicted. They weren't fighting like an inferior race. They were fighting like survivors, with strategy, creativity, and an almost unnatural ability to adapt. Zortan's gaze remained fixed on the live feed of the human fleet. His battle strategists were busy recalibrating their targeting systems, trying to lock onto the human ships, but the unpredictable movements of their fleet were causing havoc. These humans, these primitive beings, seemed to thrive in chaos. "Commander," Varath said, his voice tight with frustration, "their fleet is spreading out, using their smaller ships to create confusion. Their movements are erratic but precise, almost as if they're working together in ways we can't understand." Zortan clenched his fists. "I don't care if they're erratic or precise. We'll destroy them all the same." Despite his words, the growing unease gnawed at him. He was beginning to feel the weight of the unfamiliar situation. The human ships had no matching firepower, but they had something more dangerous: adaptability. On Earth, General Hayes was watching the battle unfold from her command center, the intensity of the situation reflected in her steely expression. The Ishlar's devastating firepower had wreaked havoc on her fleet, but it wasn't over yet. She knew their only hope was to leverage their ingenuity, something humans had always excelled at. Every fight, every war had come down to human willpower, their ability to improvise under pressure. "Captain Drake," Hayes said, her voice calm but commanding, "I need you to lead a distraction. Take the Tempest into their blind spot. We need to buy time for the other ships to regroup." Captain Alex Drake, the fearless commander of the Tempest, nodded and gave the order to his crew. "You heard the general. Let's show them what humans are made of." The Tempest broke formation, darting toward the side of the Ishlar. The alien warship's sensors were still disoriented by the small craft moving erratically around them, and in that brief moment of confusion, Drake made his move. The Tempest engaged its cloaking systems, disappearing from the alien sight. The Ishlar fired another barrage of energy blasts, this time targeting a human battleship. But as the shots made contact, a series of small explosions erupted, decoys, cleverly placed by the humans to mislead the alien sensors. The real Tempest had moved to a completely different position, flanking the alien warship at close range. Zortan's eyes narrowed. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. The human ships weren't just maneuvering to avoid the blasts. They were forcing his ship to react, to constantly adjust to their unpredictable tactics. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Mercer, aboard one of the smaller human ships, had a different strategy in mind. Using a newly developed hacking device, Mercer managed to infiltrate the Ishlar's communications. Within moments, he began broadcasting false information to Zortan's command center, feeding them faulty data that confused their targeting systems even further. "What is this?" Varath shouted in disbelief. "Our system's error." "Turn it off," Zor-Tan barked, his frustration boiling over. But it was too late. The Ishlar's sensors were scrambled, leaving it vulnerable to a new wave of human attacks. Back on Earth, General Hayes stood tall as her fleet continued to shift tactics, using the chaos to outmaneuver their alien invaders. "Keep up the pressure," she ordered. "We may not have their firepower, but we have something far stronger: our will." The humans weren't just fighting. They were outsmarting their opponents at every turn. Zor-Tan watched, stunned and increasingly frustrated, as his ship began to take damage from unexpected sources. Every move he made was countered by the ingenuity of the humans. He realized, for the first time, that this battle would not be won by sheer force alone. The battle had entered a tense stalemate. The Ishlar loomed over the battlefield, its dark form pulsing with energy, while humanity's fleet darted in and out of its grasp. The alien warship's weaponry was overwhelming, yet the humans' persistent ingenuity had left Zor-Tan unable to land a decisive blow. His warship was powerful, but it was clear that the human fleet was more resilient than he'd ever anticipated. Zor-Tan stood at the command console, watching the live feed of his damaged ship. His eyes flicked to the energy readings. His shields were still holding, but only just. The barrage of human attacks, though weak individually, had taken a heavy toll over the course of hours. His ship's systems were buckling under the pressure. "Commander," Varath spoke urgently, his voice tense, "they've launched another wave of drones. It looks like they're preparing for something more substantial." Zor-Tan gritted his teeth. These humans were relentless, pushing him further than any opponent he had ever faced. For the first time in his career, he wasn't in control. His orders weren't being followed as expected. The humans had adapted to his tactics, forcing him to react rather than dictate. "Their numbers are dwindling," Zor-Tan muttered, trying to maintain his confidence, "but they have proven more troublesome than anticipated. Increase firepower to maximum. We'll obliterate their remaining ships." He motioned for Varath to execute the command. However, before the order could be fully processed, a new transmission cut through the chaos. "Commander, the humans are doing something unexpected," came a voice from one of Zor-Tan's officers. "They've deployed an unconventional weapon." Zor-Tan turned sharply. "What do you mean? What weapon?" The officer hesitated. It's a modified EMP device. We've detected a surge in their ship near the Ishlar's critical systems. They're targeting our power grid." Zor-Tan's eyes widened. He quickly reviewed the data. The human ship in question was a medium-sized vessel, insignificant compared to the Ishlar. Yet it had successfully infiltrated the alien ship's defense perimeter using a combination of stealth and electronic warfare. "Deploy countermeasures," Zor-Tan barked, but it was too late. The EMP device detonated, sending a violent pulse through the Ishlar systems. The lights on the bridge flickered, and the ship's weapon systems sputtered to a halt. For a brief moment, everything went silent. Zor-Tan could feel the shift in momentum. The powerful alien warship had been disabled, its systems malfunctioning. On the human side of the battle, General Hayes stood rigidly in the command center, watching the alien ship falter. It was a moment of opportunity, but she knew better than to celebrate prematurely. The Ishlar would retaliate with everything it had, but for now, humanity had a chance to strike. "Now," Hayes shouted, "hit them while they're down. All ships, full assault. We can do this." With newfound resolve, the human fleet, battered but not broken, launched their final assault. Small ships maneuvered with surgical precision, targeting the Ishlar's weakened engines, while the larger ships concentrated their fire on the ship's hull. Zor-Tan, caught in a wave of disbelief, slammed his fist against the console. His flagship, invincible in his mind, was now vulnerable. The humans had done the impossible. They had found a way to fight back, re-establish control. Zor-Tan ordered, his voice cracking with frustration. All hands, stabilize the ship. But even as his crew scrambled to regain control, he knew they were losing. The Ishlar's immense power was being chipped away, and for the first time in his life, Zor-Tan had no idea how to proceed. Human ingenuity had turned the tide of battle, and the warship, once a symbol of invincibility, was now the hunted. Inside the bridge of the Ishlar, the once unshakable confidence that Zor-Tan had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a deep, unsettling frustration. The alien warship was faltering. Despite all the might of its weapons, the humans had struck at its very core, exploiting its vulnerabilities with precision and cunning. It was an enemy he couldn't predict, couldn't control, and that was something Zor-Tan simply could not tolerate. "Commander," Varath said, his voice low with concern, "the damage is worsening. Shields are at 30% capacity. The EMP surge has caused massive failures in our power grid. We need to pull back or risk total failure." Zor-Tan's gaze swept over the bridge. His crew was scrambling to stabilize the systems, but the damage was too extensive. The ship that had once dominated entire star systems was now vulnerable, its once unmatched power ebbing away. "No," Zor-Tan said sharply. "We do not retreat. We crush them." He clenched his fists, seething with a desire for retribution. For all his tactical brilliance, this moment had exposed an unthinkable flaw. He had underestimated humanity. He had believed their lack of advanced technology and military might would leave them defenseless. He had been wrong. The humans were fighting with something far greater, an unwavering resolve to protect their home. Zor-Tan's eyes flicked to the view screen. Earth's planet was still in view, vibrant with life, yet now a battleground. The humans would stop at nothing to protect it, even if it meant fighting against insurmountable odds. His mind raced for a solution. There had to be something, anything, that would give the Ishlar the upper hand again. "Initiate the tactical override," Zor-Tan ordered, a dangerous edge creeping into his voice. "Activate the vortex cannon." Varath's eyes widened. "Commander, are you certain?" "The vortex cannon is a last resort weapon. Its activation will destabilize the entire ship's systems. We could lose everything." Zor-Tan's gaze hardened. "We're already losing everything. Either we destroy them now, or we die trying." The vortex cannon was a weapon of immense power, capable of manipulating space itself, creating localized black holes to suck entire fleets into oblivion. It was the Ishlar's ultimate weapon, its last defense. But its activation came at a great cost. The weapon would drain nearly all the ship's energy, destabilizing its core and potentially causing the ship to implode. If it failed, they would be caught in the explosion. But Zor-Tan was past caring. If the Ishlar was going down, it would take the humans with it. As Varath hesitated, Zor-Tan's hand slammed onto the console, initiating the sequence. The massive warship shuddered as the vortex cannon powered up, a swirling energy field beginning to form at the ship's core. On Earth, General Hayes felt the shift in the battle. Her sensors detected a sudden surge in the alien ship's energy output. The Ishlar was preparing something devastating. "Admiral Riker, what's happening?" she demanded. "It's the vortex cannon, ma'am," Riker replied, his face tense. "They're going for a full power shot. If they fire, they'll try to pull us into a black hole." Hayes' heart raced. If the Ishlar fired, it would obliterate everything in its path, and humanity's last hope could be snuffed out in an instant. They had no time left. "All ships, full evasive maneuvers. We have to make sure they miss." The final showdown was imminent. Earth's fate and humanity's future hung in the balance. The Ishlar trembled as its massive vortex cannon charged. The ship's systems were strained to their breaking point, but Zor-Tan didn't care. The humans had forced his hand, and now there would be no escape for them. He could see it in his mind. The destruction of Earth, its cities torn apart, its people vanishing into the crushing void of a black hole. "Fire," Zortan commanded, his voice cold and resolute. The vortex cannon unleashed its energy, a blinding beam of twisting light. The energy rippled through space like a tidal wave, warping reality itself. The black hole that began to form at the heart of the beam threatened to pull everything into its gravitational grasp. On Earth, General Hayes' eyes widened as the incoming energy surge appeared on her tactical display. The sheer power of the vortex cannon could tear the entire fleet apart if it connected. She had only moments to act. "Admiral Riker, prepare for maximum evasive maneuvers," she shouted. "All ships, break formation and scatter." Now, the human fleet, already battered and weary from hours of combat, surged into action. Smaller vessels twisted and darted with incredible agility, their engines screaming as they outmaneuvered the deadly beam. The larger ships followed in tandem, weaving in unpredictable patterns, hoping to avoid the catastrophic pull of the black hole. But the Ishlar was fast, and its firepower nearly unrivaled. The gravitational force from the vortex cannon intensified as the black hole grew, distorting space itself. Human ships, some already badly damaged, were thrown off course, their navigation systems overwhelmed by the distortion. Yet they pressed on, refusing to back down. At the heart of the chaos, the Tempest, Earth's flagship, stood its ground. Captain Drake, steering the sleek vessel through the maelstrom, knew it was a long shot, but humanity's survival depended on it. "Prepare the Horizon device," Captain Drake ordered, his voice steady despite the urgency. Lieutenant Silva, aboard the Tempest, had been working on an experimental weapon, a last-ditch effort to counter the vortex cannon. The Horizon device was an untested prototype, a device designed to counteract the warping effects of a black hole. It wasn't a guaranteed solution, but it was their only hope. "Captain, we're ready to fire," Silva reported, her voice tight with focus. Drake gave a sharp nod. "Fire it now." The Horizon device activated, releasing a pulse of energy that surged through space. The human-designed energy wave collided with the growing black hole, destabilizing it just as the Ishlar's weapon reached full intensity. The two forces clashed, creating a dazzling burst of light. For a moment, it seemed as if the universe itself had frozen. Then, with a violent ripple, the black hole began to collapse in on itself. The asterisk vortex cannon's energy was absorbed by the pulse from the Horizon device, neutralizing the impending disaster. Zortan watched, stunned, as his weapon failed. His fingers trembled on the console, disbelief flooding his mind. What have they done? The gravitational distortion began to fade. The Ishlar's systems, already fragile from earlier damage, now experienced a catastrophic failure. Without the power from the vortex cannon, the ship's systems collapsed. The once proud warship began to lose stability, its outer hull cracking and splintering. "Impossible," Zortan whispered. The humans had done it. They had turned the tide once more. General Hayes felt a wave of relief flood through her. The danger was not over, but for the first time, she could see victory on the horizon. "Admiral, continue the assault. We have them on the ropes." Humanity's final strike had landed. The Ishlar was on the brink of collapse, and Earth's survival was within reach. The Ishlar was in freefall. Its once pristine hull now groaned and cracked under the strain of failed systems and structural damage. Zortan watched in stunned silence as his flagship, his pride, shuddered violently, its power grid flickering in and out. The vortex cannon had been his final gambit, and it had failed spectacularly. His crew was scrambling to maintain control, but it was clear the warship was beyond saving. "Commander, we can't stop it," Varath said, his voice barely audible over the chaotic alarms blaring across the bridge. "The core is unstable. We're going to lose the ship." Zortan's mind raced. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. They had underestimated the humans, tried to break them with sheer power, only to be outmaneuvered at every turn. He could feel his grip on the situation slipping, like sand through his fingers. He could hear the sounds of destruction outside the bridge, the Ishlar groaning as if it too knew its inevitable fate. Desperate, Zortan reached for the emergency transmission controls. "All ships, fall back. We are abandoning the Ishlar. Prepare to disengage." But it was too late. The human fleet, bolstered by their unexpected success, was already closing in for the final strike. The remaining ships, though battered, had regained their resolve and formed up for a coordinated attack. They knew the end was near, and they were determined to make sure it was the aliens who fell, not them. On Earth's side, General Hayes stood tall, her eyes locked onto the screen. The Ishlar's demise was imminent, but she wouldn't allow herself to relax. Not yet. She had seen too many battles end in loss to count her victory before it was secured. "Admiral Riker, give me the final strike," Hayes commanded. Riker's voice came through, filled with grim determination. "Roger that, General. All ships, lock onto the Ishlar's main reactor." The Tempest, leading the charge, fired its remaining torpedoes in a swift barrage. The human ships followed suit, each strike hitting critical systems as they closed in on the vulnerable warship. The Ishlar's shields had long since been exhausted, and now, with each impact, the warship trembled violently, its core nearing total collapse. Zortan could only watch as the inevitable unfolded. He knew, deep down, that the Ishlar's destruction was now a certainty. But as the first of the torpedoes struck the core, he couldn't help but feel a pang of regret. A fleeting thought that perhaps the humans had been right all along. Survival, not destruction, was the true strength of life. The Ishlar erupted in a blinding flash of light, the force of the explosion so intense that it sent shockwaves through the battlefield. A brilliant flash consumed the warship in its entirety, sending debris scattering across the stars. The Ishlar was no more. Back on Earth, the human fleet lingered in the aftermath, breathing in the calm that followed the storm. The battle was over, and humanity had emerged victorious. General Hayes closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself the smallest of smiles. They had faced the impossible, and they had won. Against all odds, against an enemy that was thought unbeatable, humanity had stood tall. The warship was destroyed, but the message was clear: Earth would never be an easy target.